videos on YouTube if you want to have a look at it, but it's a great sense of what it's like to be in this part of British Columbia. There's more snow in Street View than there is in real life, I'm afraid. Let's go on to this next stage. I want to talk about where being everywhere. So you can see we can now explore the world and represent that world in a way that is less abstract than maps. But we also have technology available to us now that allows us to know where we are, to find locations. This is the famous cartoon that we've probably seen many times. It came from a magazine in the early 1990s. On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. The idea being that to the users of the internet, everyone was anonymous. And you could be a dog behind an email address and no one would know. Well, of course, we've moved on a long way from that. And now everyone on the internet knows who you are. Social networking is a very important part of what we do today. But you could argue there could have been a cartoon that said on the internet nobody knows where you are. Because until very recently, your experience on the internet in terms of the websites that you visited were largely ignorant of where you were visiting from. You might be able to guess whereabouts your computer was by your IP address. But remember those many websites that you used to have to go to and then have that pull-down box that says which country are you visiting from? And I'll show you something that maybe is a bit more specific to where you come from. Well, now on the internet, everybody knows where you are. Everybody knows where you were is more realistic. This was the first phone that I spent a huge amount of money on, a Nokia N95. Most geeks like myself spent a lot of money on this because it had a GPS in it and it had Wi-Fi access, and you could at last get a map displayed on the screen with a little blue flashing dot showing you where you were. We've moved on a long way since that. Now, through developments in operating systems, both in the mobile sense, iPhone and Android, but also on desktops in Windows 7 and the latest version of Snow Leopard for Macs, your location is there available to anyone writing an application. It's part of the operating system. In the same way that an application developer can find out what time it is, they can find out where you are. And that technology is also now available on the web as well, through some work that the W3C, the Web Standards Organization, have contributed. A simple line of JavaScript like that will allow any website developer to find out potentially very precisely where you are located and therefore provide you with information that is contextual, relevant to you particularly. And that's how that web page I showed you at the very beginning works. It makes use of this W3C standard to say, where is the user of this device? And let's give them the information that's most relevant to you. And this is a hugely expanding market. This is some data from Skyhook Wireless, who provide location determining technology. And it's the number of applications that make use of your location on all of the mobile platforms. So on iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, Palm, and so on. It starts off in July 2008 with maybe a dozen or so applications. By October of last year, it was well approaching 5,000 applications that are making use of location somewhere in the application. And location is important because it provides you this context. That's something I talked about last year. Context is really important in that it's a great indicator of your user's intent, where they are and what time of day it is, potentially what the weather conditions are, their history, what they've looked at before, and what their friends look at, can make it a big difference in us identifying what's relevant in terms of the information someone is interested in. And that doesn't mean, and this doesn't mean that necessarily that there's always going to be a map involved. Often location will be used behind the scenes. This is a great example that I use actually every day. This is the National Rail application that works in the UK. It allows you to find train times and look online quickly to look at timetable information. So you do departures, live departure information. The journey planning is interesting. If you select the journey plan and say plan your journey, the next screen comes up, says, do you want to use stations that you've used recently or the nearest station to you? And it's doing that by looking at the phone's location, using GPS, cell tower triangulation. So rather than you having to try and work out, well, what is the closest station to me, or even worse, type in give you a list of the closest stations to you, distance-based, so the first station will be the closest. And that, in a very simple way, is hugely powerful, making use of your location in that way. Devices like this can allow, if you want to, your information about your location to be stored and tracked. This is something you have to opt into. This is a key principle that most of the technology developers have bought into. But this is my day in the life, if you like, one day at the end of last year. This is me moving from where I live in southwest London in Teddington, then taking the train into the office in Victoria, Buckingham Palace Road. That's a very boring day for me. But if you have enough of this information for enough people, you can start to build interesting patterns. This is a map of London, the blue lines representing the tracks of the engineers that work in Google in London. So this was over a period of about 2 months, 20 people moving around London, in effect produced a street map of London. And the thickness of the lines represents basically the number of times someone went up and down that road. You can see some people took boat trips, sometimes went kind of haywire, but it's a pretty good indication of where people were moving around. That information can then be used to produce this sort of data. This is a traffic map for Silicon Valley. The major highways that you see the two lines running parallel up the valley, that data comes from Caltrans, so the Department for Transport in California. For all the other roads, that information comes from mobile phones. It comes from people who are running their mobile phones. They have an application that's running in the background that every minute or so, or every 2 minutes, is checking how fast are they moving. Then pulling all that information together to produce a traffic map like this. So that's using these devices that we carry around with us, the sensors. It's all anonymized, we don't know who the individual is, but we're using that data to collect new information. Final point I wanted to mention is this idea of the annotated world. We've come a long way in terms of the richness of information that we have. These are hotels here in Lugano, all of the hotels that we've been able to find from the various sources, from yellow pages providers, from businesses' own websites and so on. But we're increasingly looking now at other sources of information, user-generated content, more real-time information that better represents the world today as opposed to when someone was phoned up a year or so ago by a yellow pages operator and asked to fill in their details. We're trying to bring all this information together in these ideas of place pages, which I think Andrew spoke to you about yesterday. The idea here is saying, okay, there are places that we can collect, clump information from various sources around the web together. So, for here the time in Brussels, we're pulling information together from different photo and video sharing sites, information that the business owner in this case has published themselves, bringing that all together so that all the information you need for any particular place is on one web page. That's trying to make life easier for people. There's another trend that we're beginning to see developing now where you have services like this. How many people here have heard of someone like Foursquare or GoWallet? Okay, so this is quite a cutting edge stuff. These are web services that you have to download an